All right, sports fans. Hey, this is Coach Garver. I just got done going through all your graphing presentations, and I've got some suggestions for you. So this is not Presentation Zen, but it's also pretty direct. And I'm actually going to give you, I'm going to actually probably email this to you. So you've got this, but I want to give a lot of explanation between them. So overall, I think most people tried to do a really good job. And as a professor, give me 100%, man. That's all I'm asking, right? I expect you to make mistakes. I expect not to get this right out of the get go. But if I'm seeing effort, I'm good with that, right? So what I want, so the intent of this is to that we get each competition, we get better and better and better, and don't repeat the same mistakes. And so that's what this podcast is really all about. So, all right, let's talk about this. So, improvement opportunities. All right, so there we go. Name the file correctly. I kid you not. It's on the competition, and I emailed you about this. Please name the file correctly. About 30 to 35% of the teams did not name the file correctly, and you did lose a placement if you did that, right? So there were some really good ones. You took second place. You didn't name the file correctly. Next time, instant elimination. And the reason for this is it because I'm just being a tough guy, a hard guy? No. The reason is that I download all of these files. And then what happens is I sort them by time. So because I've got to put them in the 11 o'clock class and the 9:30 class, and I got to put them in different classes. So when I see somebody saying graphing competition, and I had like 15 of those, I don't know what class they belong to. So now what I have to do is I got to open them up and I got to say, okay, who is this? Well, it's Team 7. Well, I got 3 Team 7s. And if you don't put your name on it, then I've got to, I mean, it's just a guessing, right? So there's some work that I couldn't figure out who it was from. And so you have to put all your names on it, put 9:30 class, put it on that front page so I know exactly who you are. But at the end of the day, just name the file correctly, okay? And so please don't make that, it's going to be painful, but next time you just won't place, even if it's the best one I have, if you can't name the file correctly. Hey, when you guys are sending resumes, it's the same thing, right? Everybody names their resume. But if I was sending my resume to a company, I would never send my resume under the file heading resume. It would have to be named correctly, Garver's resume or Mike Garver's resume, that sort of thing, so that they could do it. Okay, good. Let's move on to the second one, interpretation. So in the case, I was pretty clear saying I need your graphs and I need the interpretation. And the interpretation has been this what, so what, and now what. And I needed to have some sort of story, some sort of interpretation of what those graphs mean. You can't just give me graphs and think that's going to be enough, even if they're done correctly. So I'll always need what, so what, now what. And remember that those things, they mean different things. And so as you prepare for the exam, I'll tell you there's a couple questions on that. Yeah, like what does what mean? And what does so what mean? And what does now what really mean? Because there's specific questions with like different interpretations. So what I would say too is we need that after each chart, right? So you don't show 5 charts and then do a what, so what, now what. You show a chart and then talk about what, so what, now what. You show another chart, so what, or what, so what, now what, and so forth, right? And then at the end, you would look across, or in your executive summary, you would still look across those. So it should be for each and every one. So the 7 sins of graphing, right? So this is, I'm going to show you some examples. There were a lot of graphing mistakes. And so I tell you, please don't do these things, and then we do those things. And so that's, you just can't make those mistakes because it's instant elimination, right? And if you do graphs wrong from now on, instant elimination. So you should have, after you create your competition, I'm going to give you a checklist. Go through these checklists and say, do we have the data sorted by order, right? I'm going to show you some of these common mistakes again, but we saw a lot of those. So I'm going to show you a pie chart, and I say label right on the chart the number and the category, like no color coding. I'm going to show you an example of this, but it's color coding. It's not aligned with Presentation Zen, and it's just really difficult. So we did have I did want to see the pie chart. Was kind of hoping that we'd see like the preference shares. They split 100%. So those were the pie charts over time. I was looking for a line chart, right? I think that's typically the best way to do things over time are line charts, and then the attribute satisfaction, where we had gave the 4 attributes, that was classic bar chart. So there we go. So one of the things that I'm happy about in this class, and we're down to do extra, do it right, is that people are figuring out, okay, I got to do things right, got to do the graphs right, I got to get the numbers right, but then it's how do we get advantage, right? So if you're thinking on this one, how do we get an advantage? I love that, right? And you're following and you're tracking well in my class. There's one thing we got to know though, and you got to be careful with this, is if you do something extra trying to get an advantage, you have to do it right. And so there was a team that, boy, did they give me 120,000% effort? They sure did. And they did something extra trying to show me that they really care and they really want to win, and they did it wrong. And I was like, oh, because now I have to grade it, right? So many times we get into trouble because in analysis, there's specific ways we're supposed to do analysis, and that's what this class is about. But if you do it wrong, then it's wrong. So be careful. Look for competitive advantage, but if you're going to do something extra, make sure you do it right. Talking about doing extra, I didn't ask for market research presentation right down there, right? So I didn't ask for that. Some people added that. I'm like, hey, congratulations, good job. You're reading between the lines. You know what it takes to win. You're looking for to get an advantage. So what was the base necessity? You had to do the graphs, and you had to give me some interpretation. Some teams that went extra kind of gave me the market research presentations. Perfect. I loved it. Moving forward, that will be standard practice in everyone, right? So in addition, so it'll be like you have to do the analysis, you have to do the graphs, and I want it in a market research presentation. So, but that was not called for in this one. But if you did it, kudos to you. And then finally, a common mistake is we need to be precise in our language. So there was a research method section that somebody did. So they're going above and beyond the call of duty, and they talked about focus groups in it. And I'm like, there's no focus groups in this. And then they kind of were just throwing things on the slide because it sounds very research, right? It's wrong. And I'm like, oh, like, be careful, right? And as we move forward, make sure that your presentation is using the right words. I can't think laser, not hand grenades, right? Not hand grenades, think laser. So if we're talking about attribute importance, that's very different than attribute satisfaction, very different from improvement or preference. Make sure you're precise in your language because, that's what we need to be precise in our language and market research. So, okay. So I'm going to send this out to you. I'm also going to send out an infographic on the 7 sins of graphing as a reminder, trying to get us to do this right. But I also want to show you a couple graphs and talk about a couple key things. So, okay, so this was a graph that, and I'm not going to tell you who did this one, and they actually did a really nice job. In fact, this team cared a lot. So, but this is, I saw a lot of these, right? So what you can see, so they've got this pie chart, and these numbers look correct. But there's little things that we can do that makes this chart much better, and I want us all to learn from this. So what we've got is we've got the percentages up top labeled correctly, and I love that, right? So good job on that. But what I would also like is up there where it's red, it should have like dominoes under it. So what I'm forced to do, I'm forced to look at this graph, and I look at the red, and then I've got to go down to the color chart. My eyes are going down. I say red is dominoes, and I come back up there, and I got to kind of hold that in my memory now. Red is dominoes, and I go, Hungry Howie's is blue, and then I got to look back up my point. You're making me work too much. So what I'm asking for on pie charts, and actually all of these graphs, is to put the number and the label right on the pie chart. Okay. Here's a little one too, right? Hungry Howie's, their colors are yellow. So why not make Hungry Howie's yellow? Domino's colors, I believe, are blue. And you see where I'm going with it. And Papa John's, I think, is actually green. My point is, we could use graphing colors to kind of line that up better as well. Because I know that Hungry Howie's is always seems to be yellow, and so we're kind of off on our colors too. The other thing is look how small the graph is. So the graph is over on this right side, and it's kind of competing with this girl's face, right? And I would make the graph bigger. So it's very common when you'll have a graph that's maybe half the size. No, The graph is the star of the show, and I don't want things competing with that graph. Okay, they circle, and the only reason the circles are off is because it's on my computer, but I did like that they were trying to circle to bring relevance to it. Here's another example too, where the graph is small, right? So it's the whole thing, and again, it's competing with that pizza being thrown in the air. The other thing with this one too is that decimal places, right? So I'm pretty careful on, well, and they didn't get dinged for this. Moving forward, we're going to have a talk about decimal places and how many. Follow my lead is what I would say on that. The other one too is that this is not in descending order. So, excuse me. You see the highest one is taste, and then it goes down, and then it goes up. Put those in descending order. That stuff is really critical. All right. This happens for a reason. So I like that they were getting very creative here. Like this, here's another team, and the team that I just showed you, they worked hard on theirs. I liked what they did. They made some mistakes, but boy, I saw the effort, right? So I appreciated that. Something goes on that I saw a decent number of this, and I'm not sure why this happens, but you want to make sure that when things get turned in, that this category name and value actually show up. And I'm not sure if that's, I'm not sure what happened on this one, but these aren't there, and this is not all that uncommon, okay? All right, there we go. Here's the one that I like, by the way, and I'm going to show you this too. A common mistake is when we deal with satisfaction is we need consistent scales, one of the 7 sins of graphing. So watch this. It's 5 to 10, and then the next one is 5 to 10. So there we go. So we're talking about the same day. So this is a really good thing that we want to do, right? So it's 5 to 10, 5 to 10. Now I would have been more consistent, and so this has 5 and this has 5.00. So those little things will kind of catch up to us, right? But this team is in descending order, and they had consistent scales, and so I looked favorably upon that, right? Another group did this one right here. So here again, this looks good, right? So it's in descending order. They didn't just have Excel defaults on the scales, and then they follow this up with a what, so what, now what, right? And I loved it, right? I love that it was right on the screen like this. I love that it looked right. I didn't even, at this point in time, I don't even care if these are correct almost, right? Now the next one, they need to be correct. But I was just so pleased that I saw what, now what, or so what, now what, and that we were kind of starting to go down that path. Okay, so here we go. Real quick, name the file correctly. Make sure you give me an interpretation of what, so what, now what after each chart. Don't make the 7 sins of graphing. And let's see, if you're going to do extra, make sure you do it correctly. And in the future, we'll need all of the market research presentation sections included. And then make sure you're precise in your language moving forward. So I will say this, I totally appreciated the effort that you guys gave me. Most teams showed me that you're in it to win it. And at this point in the game, that's all I can ask for. So thank you for that. And good luck on the exam tomorrow.